Oh, nice. Now here is what I will call a truly spicy meatball to discuss. The introduction of hussnasty mode. Also, it looks like Aridin is chatting up Rose as the previous game implied he would, but I think we can completely ignore that in favor of this art style topic, because it's more interesting and also Aridin sucks. I think shortly after I started rolling out weird drawings like this, someone asked me what I called the style, and I replied by naming it hussnasty mode myself, because, well, it's a bit nasty, isn't it? Kind of raw, a little over illustrated, and making use of a lot of jagged aliased pixel edges for a hatching type effect. It was sort of the point to make it a little nasty, kind of aggressively incongruous with the other styles previously established. It is here I will invoke a concept that I feel was incredibly important to the ongoing production of Homestuck, which I will call a creative power move. But before I go off the deep end about all that, it's important to note that drawings like this are introduced in contrast with the simple RPG sprite mode, which was also established very recently as something Homestuck was allowed to use as a stylistic presentation of characters and settings. That's partly the point here, that every time Homestuck does something like this, it's widening its own umbrella in terms of what it's allowed to do stylistically, which includes dramatically simplifying and abstracting its forms. Which implicitly asks another question: can Homestuck allow itself to go in the other direction, to render characters with higher degrees of definition, regardless of congruity, and freely navigate this full artistic palette at any time, resulting in sharp stylistic contrast and a certain amount of visual thrashing? The answer to that question, almost immediately after it's asked in the form of dropping RPG sprites Rose into a standard panel shot, is yes, Homestuck can do that, and clearly it will do that. So having said that, let's see if I can wrestle this idea of a creative power move into the realm of comprehensibility. Homestuck is full of these moves. Sometimes they come off as really overt or aggressive, as this one someone does. There are a few others that probably qualify, like reprinting the entire Troll Romance spiel, Trickster mode, and almost all of Caliborn's submissions. Perhaps the Troll Pirate Erotica, too? I'm sure we could name more examples if we put our heads together. There are more tame, more friendly examples, such as, hey, guess what? Today Homestuck gets to be a playable RPG game out of nowhere, and you didn't know it could do that. Anything that pushes the envelope, challenges people, keeps them on their toes, and reminds them that this is neither a safe nor static enterprise. People get very comfortable with art that they enjoy, particularly if it's an ongoing, regularly delivered product that lets them settle into rhythms of expectation. It starts to feel like theirs in some ways. The favorable experience is taking place inside them after all, so they feel like that experience belongs to them, which is fair. Such is human nature to start instinctively building a possessive relationship with art we enjoy. But as much as it feels this way, it simply can never be entirely true. There is the way the reader wants to work to be, as dictated by the special feelings of fondness for what they're already familiar with, and there is the way the artist wants the work to be, as an expression of their ever-evolving vision, which can include anything. So anytime I felt that certain people were getting overly comfortable with the way they assumed the story needed to be, whether it was the format, narrative structure, or art style, these little power moves were deployed as a means of pushing back against those forces. It's a way to make frequent statements on the media's versatility, but it also turned out to be a very effective inoculation against too many people getting those overly comfortable, presumptuous feelings about what the story needs to be in the first place. But such moves do come with trade-offs, like drawing whiplash effects, or risk of untethering the media from previously established rhythms of coherence, to whatever extent that coherence even really existed in the first place. In short, it can make things feel just a little bit weird. My take on that is that it's okay, because that's explicitly what we've always been doing here. Getting a bit weird with media, staying almost pathologically loose about everything, and making the best of the situation. The next 15 book pages are where most of the dabbling with the style took place, using the story itself as a live canvas for messing around with it. I virtually never did any sketch testing of any sort outside the comic. The comic itself always was the drafting process, in a totally transparent way, which was a policy that kept it rolling out fast. Some of these drawings felt pretty out of control, a bit uncanny when juxtaposed with the other styles. But some seem to strike a nicer balance, like the panel on the upper right, or the one where Rose talks to Jasper Sprite a few pages. If I used this style more, I probably would have gravitated toward whatever style felt most successful from the stretch of panel studies. But the fact is, I mostly discontinued after this, with only a few exceptions here and there. The main reason was that, even with the more successful panels, it just felt like it added too much drawing time to the update process. The goal wasn't just to try new crazy things, it was also to balance with whatever sequential art methods could be done really fast in a sustainable way. Slowing down to overly render a face with a lot of wild alias hatching wasn't really the best visual trade-off for the time investment, so it kind of dropped out of the comics toolkit. I wonder if it comes across as a deliberate creative choice that Aradia's explosive, aggressive volley of random output ties directly in a metatextual way to the sharply facilitating visual presentations of the story itself. I don't know if that's scanning in an obvious way now, and to be honest, it was a long time ago, so I'm not sure to what extent I was hoping it would. Anyway, this pretty strange facial rendering that this graphic freestyling result has resulted in. Stuff like this is plunging us about as deep into the uncanny part of the visual curve that the story ever allows us to go, which is probably for the best, as is the fact that it pulls away from this style pretty soon. But pushing it this far really hammers it home as a power move, because there's no way you can come away from this style sequence and conclude that the artist gives the slightest fuck about the various measures of formalism and consistency that you might wish he would abide by to optimize the reader experience. Creative power moves that essentially send the signal, I just don't give a fuck about blank and you can't make me, have twofold consequence. First, it helps regulate the attitudes of those inclined to enforce such principles of formalism, a sort of preempting the inclination for such people to even regard it as a problem. Second, as an extension of that attitude-shaping effect, it forces people to focus on what the artist intends as the most important aspects of the work. Showing the visuals as this chaotic variable send the message that the specific visual presentations are not that important, and things exist on such a layer of abstraction that specific visuals may not convey anything that concrete at all, except a hypothetical expression of a certain underlying Platonic ideals functioning as a story's basic units, which then forces you to focus on the elements which are noticeably non-variable, like the nature of the dialogue, the focus on characterization, and profile building. The examination of certain ideas and themes, all kinds of stuff that has no intersection with adherence to formalistic patterns that are designed to make readers more comfortable with their favorite serialized entertainment product. We may conclude that, despite the extensive reasoning laid out here, the visual result of spontaneously dropping in such an extensive style to the comic out of nowhere could be regarded as goofy as hell. I kind of buy that take. But there are still some things I like a lot about it. Like, if there was a comic done entirely in the art style used in the right-hand panel above, that could be a really fun thing to read. That high-energy, single-pixel with scribble work of the cloud back there, pretty good shit. But that's probably enough about hussnasty mode, both now and forever. We got Nep on the line. Lots of cute BS ahoy.